There are countless types of matter in the universe. So, now that we can describe them based on their physical and chemical properties, we have to work on organizing them. There are a lot of different levels and classifications of matter, but the broadest categories are based on whether a sample of matter is made of uniform particles or not. This breaks any sample of matter down into one of two categories: pure substances or mixtures. Pure substances are any form of matter made of uniform particles, meaning that every particle in it is the same. Mixtures are made of multiple types of particles that are not chemically bonded together. An example of a pure substance would be a brick of gold or a balloon full of helium. Every particle in the brick is a gold particle. Every particle in the balloon is helium. A mixture would be something like a soda can or the air. A can has some iron, some aluminum, some nickel, and a few other elements all blended together. The air is made of nitrogen compounds, oxygen compounds, water, carbon dioxide, and several other gases. These different types of particles are all there, but they aren't forming any new type of substance. They're just mixed together. We will be talking more about pure substances this year than mixtures, not because there are more of them, but because their properties and composition are more consistent, and because you actually need pure substances to make mixtures. Pure substances are split into two categories: elements and compounds. Elements are the simplest organization of matter. Any sample of matter can be broken down into its ingredient elements. An element is a pure substance that cannot be broken down into simpler substances by either physical or chemical means. Whether you are looking at a sample the size of a ship or the size of a dime, an element's composition and properties will be the same. They're made of only one type of atom, which is the simplest unit of an element. You can chop them into pieces as small as you want, but they will still be the same type of atom all the way through. Compounds, on the other hand, are made of multiple types of atoms. Unlike mixtures, in a compound, the multiple types of atoms present are bonded together to form a new type of pure substance. Instead of being uniform atoms all the way through, like elements, compounds will have larger particles, each made of multiple atoms bonded together uniformly throughout a sample. You could look at the pictures. The one on the left is a diagram of helium, which is the simplest form of the element helium, and the one on the right is a diagram of a water molecule, a type of compound. In the water molecule, you should be able to see the oxygen atom bonded to two hydrogen atoms together to form one larger particle called a compound. Elements are all made up of different types of atoms and organized according to their physical and chemical properties on the periodic table. Periodic means that something occurs at predictable intervals of time, or that it falls into a pattern. So the periodic table of elements is a table of the elements organized by patterns that form in their physical and chemical properties. In the past, memorizing the periodic table was an important part of science classes. But now any one of you with 2 minutes and access to the internet could find a copy of it to reference, if need be, so why waste time memorizing it? Instead, we will be focusing on learning what type of information it can tell us about each atom, how it's organized, and how to read it. This will continue through future units, though. We will, however, go over some of the main types of elements listed on the periodic table. The three main groups are the metals, nonmetals, and metalloids. Metals are the left side of the periodic table. In the picture above, they are the ones in blue to white color. Metals are shiny, malleable, meaning they can be bent or hammered without breaking, reflective to light, and conductive to both heat and electricity. Nonmetals are mostly on the right side of the periodic table. They're the ones in yellow and green. If you notice, there is one nonmetal on the left side of the periodic table. This is hydrogen. Its simplicity makes it behave a bit differently than most of the other elements. Unlike metals, nonmetals are often liquids or gases at room temperature. When they are in solid state, they are dull instead of reflective, non-conductive instead of conductive, and usually brittle. When a metal will bend and flatten if you hammer it, a nonmetal will shatter. Nonmetals are the most abundant elements in the bodies of living things. The third group, metalloids, were the ones in the red on the periodic table above. They are placed right in between the metals and nonmetals, because they share properties of both groups. Each element is unique in which properties it draws from the metals and which it draws from the nonmetals. Based on an element's position on the periodic table and the properties of the elements around it, you can usually predict its properties. So an element found in the middle of the metal section probably has properties similar to other metals, most likely being reflective, malleable, conductive, etc. The number of protons and electrons, atomic mass, electronegativity, and polarity all can affect where an element falls on the periodic table. The elements are the basic ingredients for all matter in the universe, but if you noticed, there aren't that many elements. There are only 92 elements that occur naturally, even though there are a lot more than 92 types of matter in the universe. We get all those other types of matter by chemically combining elements into larger particles called compounds. They are pure substances, but they can be broken down by chemical means into smaller parts. Even though compounds are made of chemically bonded elements, their properties can be different than the properties of the elements that make them. For example, water is made by bonding two hydrogen atoms to an oxygen atom. Both oxygen and hydrogen are gases at room temperature. However, when you combine them, the new compound, water, is a liquid at room temperature. Since the properties of compounds differ from the properties of the elements that make them, they are considered new, pure substances. Dangerous elements can bond to make harmless compounds, and likewise, harmless elements can bond to form harmful compounds. One other thing that makes them pure substances is that a compound is always made of the same ratio of component elements. Water is always two hydrogen atoms and one oxygen atom. Table salt is always one sodium atom and one chlorine atom. If you have the wrong elements or the wrong number of elements, you will not make the same compound. If I give you lettuce, carrots, and sugar and asked you to make a cake, you couldn't do it because you had the wrong ingredients. To make a particular compound, you need the right ingredients, or elements, and the right recipe, or ratio. Since compounds are made by chemically bonding atoms together, they can be broken down, rearranged, or made during a chemical reaction. Any chemical change that you observe is really just compounds forming, rearranging, or breaking down. Some compounds are more stable than others, though. Some will need a catalyst to react, some need an input of energy, and some will just react on their own if given enough time. These reactions happen all around you and in you all the time. For example, when you eat a steak, its proteins, which are large compounds, are broken down into amino acids, which are smaller compounds, by mechanical and chemical digestion. Your body then reassembles the amino acids into other proteins that the cells of your body need. If you take a few minutes to think about it, you should be able to come up with some other examples of chemical reactions that take place in your body or around the house. Each of them is just an example of compounds changing. Now we finally get to mixtures. You have a mixture when two or more pure substances are blended together with no particular ratio between the amounts of each substance. A mixture can be a few different types of compounds blended together, a few compounds and elements, or just a few elements. But the important point that makes it a mixture is that its parts do not chemically bond to each other. Since they don't chemically bond to each other, the amount of each ingredient that goes into the mixture, the amount of solute or solvent, doesn't matter. If you're making lemonade with powdered drink mix, how much powder and how much water you add will affect the taste, but it won't change the identity of the drink. It will still be lemonade even if you add an extra teaspoon of mix or leave out a few grains. This is what makes mixtures and compounds different. Compounds don't work this way. Due to this difference, unlike compounds, mixtures can be separated using only physical means. Physical means refers to processes like filtering, which uses things like a coffee filter or strainer to separate parts of the liquid. Other processes, such as distilling, which is boiling, or centrifuging, which is spinning, may be necessary to separate some really well-blended mixtures, but you never need a chemical reaction to separate the parts of a mixture. There are different types of mixtures based on how well its parts, the solute and solvent, are blended. Solvent refers to the main part of the mixture, the most abundant ingredient. In lemonade, the solvent is the water. Solute refers to the smaller parts added to the solvent. So in the lemonade example, the sugar of water would be the solute. The most well-blended type of mixture is a solution. These are mixed so well that they look like a single substance. At first glance, they will appear like a pure substance, and will probably require a more active approach, such as distilling or centrifuging, to separate the solute and solvents. Salt water or lemonade would be examples of solutions. The second most well-blended type of mixture is a colloid. In a colloid, the solute is evenly distributed throughout the solvent and may look like a single substance, but if you look closely, you'll be able to see the particles floating around. In some cases, you may have to shine a light through the mixture to be able to tell if there's anything there. But if the mixture scatters the light as it passes through, it is a colloid. The key identifying traits of a colloid are that its parts can be seen, but it's not settled to the bottom of the container. A good example of a colloid is milk. The final type of mixture, and the most poorly blended type, is a suspension. In a suspension, the particles of the added material are large enough that they will eventually sink and settle to the bottom of the mixture. They may appear to be suspended for a while, but they will eventually settle to the bottom. For example, think about a snow globe, salad dressing, or any drink that says "shake well" on the label. You shake orange juice before drinking it because the pulp has all settled to the bottom of the carton. The pulp and the juice are a suspension. There is also a type of mixture made specifically from blended metals called an alloy. A lot of technological advancements have been made because of mankind's ability to blend metals together and create alloys that enhance the properties of the metals. To reiterate the main points of this chapter, all matter is composed of elements. Some types of matter will be the elements alone in a pure form, called elements, and others will be elements chemically bonded together, called compounds. Most samples of matter will be mixtures of elements and chemically bonded elements. The elements and compounds are considered pure substances, but the mixtures are not.